Never under any circumstances should you ever live with a woman. Okay? I'm telling you this from personal experience, and stay tuned with me through the story because I very rarely, if ever, share legitimate personal stories, okay, about my life. I'm going to say that again. If you are not married as a man, never under any circumstances ever, and I mean ever, live with a woman, because you will see, okay, based on how society and how the world is set up, if things go south, you will see very, very quickly just how powerless you are. Okay, years ago, one of my first girlfriends together, we were living together. Okay, and this was something that I've never shared on this channel. This is something that I've never shared with any of you. And it might be kind of hard for me to open up fully about this, so maybe give me 30 seconds to a minute to work my way into this. Okay, so one of my first girlfriends when we were together, we lived together for probably a year, year and a half, and based off of, my personal taste in women and based off of, her attitude and some of the things that I noticed, I clearly could see at a very, short time that it was an absolutely crucial mistake that I made in my life. Okay. Now, as a young man at the time in his early 20s, you don't know what you don't know. Okay. So that's what you have to remember is for some of you who you're in this channel and you think, man, how does one get to the point where they have wisdom to share about men, masculinity, life, dating, women, leveling up, making money? Well, it's not only because I came from absolute rock bottom and was completely self-made, but every single issue you have ever ran into or seen with women, I have also seen. Because of that, I can get back at a higher level. Living with this girl, okay, there's certain behavior that I just don't like, and like at night, I'm laying down, I'm sleeping. She would always fall asleep before me. Okay, she'd always fall asleep before me, and just because I have like ADD or whatever, I'm an entrepreneur, it's hard for me to turn my brain off. I'm always thinking about business, I'm thinking about things I want to do, I'm thinking about how I want to develop my life. It's hard for me to turn off. That's how I am. It's a blessing because obviously I can get a hell of a lot of stuff done and I can stay real focused, but it's a curse because, well, everybody can like turn off. I have no off switch. That's what sucks. She'd always fall asleep before me, and as she'd fall asleep before me, as her attitude would progressively get worse and worse through the relationship, meaning like who she was in the beginning was not who she turned out to be. And that typically happens the closer you get to a woman. You start to see that, the spark or the chemistry or what was in the beginning isn't what continues the more you invest as a man. And obviously I was invested because we were living together. I'd lay there at night and I'd look at her when she's sleeping and I'd think to myself, is this really the best I can do? Because if I look at the trajectory of my life right now, if this continues, I'm going to be with a woman who's average or slightly just above average, right? Nothing special. Okay, is this the best I can do with my circumstance? Is this the best I want to settle for in my dating life? Is this the best I want to settle for in a relationship? Is this the best quality of woman I could potentially obtain as a young 20-something-year-old man? I lay down every single night and I'd look at her and I'd think about that. And after a month or two, I came to the conclusion that it was a no. There's no way I would settle, or there is no way I would say, this is it, this is the best I can get. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret, and there's a difference in mindset and mentality, but stay tuned because the story gets whack. There's a difference in mindset between a man who knows deep down on a deep down level that he can generate options and one who can't, okay? Now, I have a Rolodex of past women I've been with that are very attractive. And I don't forget about that. See, that's the thing, is every micro success builds up. If any of you ever struggle with your confidence too, what I'd advise you to do is write down every amazing interaction you've ever had with a beautiful woman. Write them down so you can see, hey, here's proof I am a cool guy or I am confident. That's not something I've done, but what I can tell you is if you're a guy who struggles, it would definitely help. But I would lay at night and I would remember the beautiful women I've been with or the amazing experiences I've shared with girls, or the nights when you'd have natural, authentic, organic chemistry with women who are very attractive, and I just lay and I look and I think, there's no way I'm going to settle for this. So one day I tried to, and here's the thing is, every single day in my life, no matter what, I would always keep composure, because I believe that that is extremely important as a man. Never in my life have I ever raised my voice at a woman. Never in my life have I ever called a woman a mean name or swore at her. Never in my life have I ever went off on a tangent and text paragraph after paragraph. Never have I ever blown up and lost emotional control. Now, for some of you wondering how to keep attraction in a relationship, that definitely is a big component. When a woman sees a man is completely grounded and can't be moved off center, extremely attractive. Here's another thing though that nobody tells you, especially in the online dating space, that scares the hell out of a woman. It scares the hell out of a woman because you have such a rock solid foundation. She wonders if you're ever going to be fully invested to the point where you will bend or break for her. See, since 99% of guys do that and operate that way, when she sees a guy will never go weak for her or for her sex under any circumstances, it scares them because they start to feel powerless. Okay? This point in the relationship, this woman could probably feel on some level that I was getting this vibe or I was wanting to dissolve things. And not to mention, this is going to sound cocky or this may sound arrogant, but I don't care because at the time, everything in my life was going up. I was lifting heavier weights in the gym than I ever have been before. I was making more money than I ever have been before. I was gaining more, I was having a bigger YouTube channel and a bigger fan base than I ever have before. I was all of a sudden being connected with well-known people, right? And this girl would see this. So I was clearly on my way up, right? I had multiple, influencers with 500,000, 1 million followers that are in my contacts that we're having conversations on the phone. All of a sudden I'm connecting with other either online business owners or entrepreneurs who are doing 7-8 figures per year. Like I was going up, okay? And it's because I put in a lot of work. Now, what happened when I explained that I want to dissolve the relationship, or I don't think we should see each other, or I think that, and obviously I'm the man and I was making far more money. I was the one majority paying for all of the expenses in the house. I wanted to dissolve the relationship. And when I did that, all hell broke loose. Now, I'm going to cut right here for a second and take a breath so that way I can explain how this went down the right way. Now, this was from many, many years ago, okay, which means I was in Arizona at the time. Like, this was so long ago. Obviously, I'm not going to say who it was. I'm going to leave the name completely anonymous because it doesn't matter who I was with at the time. You just have to understand the moral of this. Like, you have to understand the base of this story. That's the most important thing right now that I'm about to tell you. When I told her I wanted to dissolve the relationship, all hell broke loose on such a level that I have never seen, okay? We are talking hysterically crying, getting in my face, right, swearing at me, threatening me, talking about what a piece of shit that I am, okay? This woman's behavior is erratic, right, on her knees, dry heaving and hyperventilating, to the point where she took a iPhone cord charger. I had a 10-foot cord charger. She started wrapping it around her neck, started squeezing with it, saying how she wanted to off herself right then and there. This is what I saw with my own two eyes. You can't make this up. So what I start doing is I start freaking out to some degree mentally because I'm like, I've never seen anything like this before. And I start taking every single sharp object out of the house. So I start taking all of the kitchen knives out of the house. My whole goal was I was going to put these in my car and I was going to either drive them to my parents' house or I was going to drive them to a friend's house or I was going to get rid of every single thing that could be harmful. And something happened that I'll never forget. As I'm packing up my car and as I'm packing up majority of anything that could be used that would be harmful, she looked at me, stopped crying for a second, and she said these words. She goes, "If you walk out that door, and if you get in your truck right now and you leave, I'm going to call the cops, and I'm going to tell them that you hit me. I'm going to tell them that you hurt me." Now, I want this to sink in, because at the time, I can't express the amount of fear that I was in due to the fact of the blatant lie that just came out of this woman's mouth, who supposedly loved me at all times and wanted the best for me. Never in my life would I ever lay a hand on a woman. I would never hit a woman. I would never hurt a woman. I mean, I would never even swear at a woman. I have two sisters that are both younger. I'm obviously a emotionally stable individual where if something were to happen, even if I got cheated on, I don't think I would have that big of an outburst where I would just dissolve the relationship and I know that I can go back out in the world and generate options. And that doesn't come from me being cocky or arrogant. That just comes from knowing what to do and knowing how to navigate the world and be a man who can go out and get what he wants. So there's no way that a woman would ever move me off center to the point where I would ever lose control of my temper and do something like that. What just came out of her mouth was a blatant lie. And I was so fearful in that moment because I knew that I would be absolutely powerless. And what I mean by that is, let's say, girl walks outside, smacks her head against the brick wall on purpose, says, this happened to me, or he did this. Let's say it takes a frying pan, smacks herself in the face, like, you don't know. And she was so confident, she was so calm, she was so composed when she said it. She was dead serious, and it was downright evil. Because never in my life would I ever do that. Never in my life would I ever lay a hand on a woman. And she knew I would never do that, but she just wanted to get at me so bad. It was like she wanted to completely start to pick me apart because I wanted to dissolve the relationship. And there was two things I could have done in that moment. There was an option A and there was an option B, and I was 100% in fight or flight mode. Option A was submit to her request, meaning don't walk out that door, don't go and drive all the kitchen utensils, the knives, everything out of the house, and stay there and try to verbally work it out so that way I'm safe. That's option one. Option one would be submit to her frame. So I thought to myself, you know what? Obviously I haven't done anything. Obviously this is my home apartment I'm paying for. Obviously majority of all of the things in here are mine. And obviously I have every right to dissolve a relationship if I view that it doesn't suit me. Option A would have been easier. Option A would have been easy to say, you know what, she does have the power right now because I don't know what could happen if she did that. But I told myself, fuck that. I'm going to take a risk. And I'm going to leave anyways. And I looked at her and I said, if that's what you feel that you need to do, do it then. Do it. I'm out. Walk to my truck. Girl runs after me. Clings on to my right leg. Is holding me. Will not let me get in my pickup. This went on for minutes. Until she finally let go. I drove out of the house. I can't remember where I went. I can't remember if I went to my friends or what I did. And I'm not going to lie, when I was in my truck, I was very scared. I was actually crying, right? I've never seen anything like this. I've never had my heart pump so fast. I've never had anybody threaten me in that manner. And it's so much different when a woman threatens you compared to when a man threatens you, because you're powerless. You're powerless from a physical and from a mental standpoint. All you can say is words, right, to a woman. All you can say is words. There's a couple options with your words. You can blow up and you can say, well, get screwed or blah, blah, blah. Or, you can also keep composure. But regardless, all you have is your verbals. Verbal jujitsu, I like to call it. That's all you got. If a man threatens you, physical confrontation could escalate. But there's a high chance, like if physical confrontation escalates, you're flipping a coin, there's a chance you might win.
What is this dude talking about?
You are a sad, strange little man, and you have my pity.
That was just 16 minutes of pure projection. You're lucky I sped it up. That was not dating or masculinity advice. That was one man's anecdotal toxic breakup story being sold to an audience of men as absolute truth to be applied to all women. There are millions of people all around the world who build lives together under one roof without being married, and even more who believe in living together before taking the leap of faith and sacrifice that is marriage. One thing is for sure. Living together is an eye-opening experience that forces the masks that we wear to dissolve. But never, ever live with a woman. That is so weak. That is so fear-based. That is wounded. That is sus. I swear, not enough people have enough wisdom to comprehend the difference between what words people are using and what they are really saying. I, for one, am a big believer in marriage. And while I might get on board with someone proposing that marriage should precede living together in courtship and dating with intention of marriage, but that's not the case here with Casey. In my opinion, he literally tells on himself. He spends most of the video painting his ex as this crazy, bipolar, borderline personality disorder having woman without realizing he is the yin to her yang. A man who lies awake calculating if the woman he claims to love is the best he can get, looking at his recent gym gains and how many followers on social media that he has at the moment and measuring her against every woman that he's ever slept with. Is that not toxic behavior? Is that not even the exact reflection of what the online manosphere has coined an alpha widow, which means, to my understanding, a woman who has been with a guy who has a lot of money or a guy who is really good in bed and now she is damaged goods and will never be satisfied by any man going forward because she will always compare everything to the things she has experienced in the past. While there is truth to that happening in people, it also exposes highly narcissistic and highly materialistic character traits and shallow value system. The thing that upsets me with content like this is that it's poison for the minds, hearts, and egos of men who are looking for direction and seeking answers for their pain. For the men who do want to have a healthy relationship with a woman one day. I have lived with multiple women over the course of the last 14 years of my life, ever since I bought my first place as I entered my 20s. And now I have a wife. But when it comes to women, I have had good experiences and I have had bad experiences. I have had exes hyperventilating to the point of throwing up, or smashing plates, or cheating on me, or showing up at my house in the middle of the night unannounced, or 25 missed calls. But on the other side of all that crazy, I was also never a good man either. I was not faithful. I was cold. I was calculated. I was controlling. I wore a mask of masculinity to cover up my insecurity. I always prop myself up as the better person in all of my relationships, simply because I was more successful, or I was more athletic, or I had more social status, or she was a stripper, or whatever. I tended to consider myself the better person than the woman I was with in all of my relationships for one reason or another. And for that reason alone, it was impossible for me to align with a healthy, stable, moral woman, because I myself was not those things. I also noticed that out of every single woman that I ever had a serious long-term relationship with, not one of them ever had an involved father in her life. And I think that says more about me than it does about them. It exposes something that I've always been attracted to, something that I've always needed, a role that I've always sought to play in women's lives: the hero, the savior, the man that their father could never be. And what it also gave me was, it allowed me to have no man to measure my own masculinity against. That was mostly unconscious in my early 20s, but man, what a revelation when I really saw that for what it was. Extreme accountability and ownership leads to maturity and wisdom in ways that you cannot even imagine until you step through that door and close it behind you. I think it's pretty wild to expect wifey behavior when you are not a shining example of husband behavior. If you are the type of man to be assessing the woman that you love while she's asleep, devaluing her, thinking to yourself that you can get better, then you are not as emotionally and mentally stable and healthy as you might think you are. So why would you expect that the woman laying next to you would be? I think it's also important to acknowledge that abandonment wounds run deep. I'm not excusing crazy behavior or extreme emotional dysregulation, but being betrayed can be enough to short circuit the mind of someone who otherwise seemed stable. People revert back to the age where the wound was deepest. Suddenly you have a grown adult throwing a temper tantrum and screaming like a banshee and crying and making threats. And men are no less crazy than women during a breakup. Some women even lose their lives if the man goes into a fit of rage, right? And yeah, I'll be that guy for a second and remind you that statistically, the most dangerous man in a woman's life is the man that she is living with and is intimately involved with. So, to be honest, we could argue that a woman telling other women to never live with a man because it's unsafe for her is actually possibly even more illegitimate and intelligent of a take. Our relationships are a reflection of ourselves. And this guy, Casey, whether he knows it or not, is living through the lens of ego and narcissism. And men who do this can only attract women who are borderline or extremely insecure doormats with a lot of emotional and mental health issues. He's just taking fear and repackaging it as wisdom to sell to men who are struggling with women, because it will help justify their wounds and bitterness, and it will also help validate their lack of success. Only men who can't get with good women will think to themselves, never ever live with a woman. Any man who has ever lived with a good woman, a contributing teammate, knows what's really good. My lady, she is amazing. She does so much for me and I for her. She is wise and emotionally intelligent and intentional and considerate in ways that I can only hope to continue to glean from. I am a better man today beside her than I have ever been when I was living a faster life and juggling multiple women and playing that caricature of alpha male. Yes, the dynamics do shift and change once you start living with somebody, because now you are with them every single day. Your time is not quite as focused or intentional as it once was. It's very different than if you were just seeing them for a couple of hours at a time. It's easy to keep your mask on over dinner and drinks and play James Bond for the evening. But when you live with someone, your masks come off. Her mask comes off, and so does yours. You start to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. And you have to be mature enough to navigate that. Things change once they see how you are all day long, how you spend your free time, how you clean up after yourself, etc. And if you are someone who relies on wearing a mask made out of your ego to keep people attracted, you are really going to struggle when they get close enough to see your flaws and the cracks in your armor. They're going to see your true colors, and they're probably not going to like all of them. And you're going to see their true colors, and you're probably not going to like all of theirs. And that is where erosion can begin to happen and maintenance needs to start taking place. It's shallow people who need to stay in the shallow end of the pool, because if it gets a little bit too deep for them, they can't swim and they drown. This is the same thing. Shallow people need to stay in shallow relationships. Shallow people should not live with each other. Cohabitating and marriage is for people who have the maturity and the capacity for partnership, for growth, for vulnerability, and true intimacy. Casey here is obviously not one of those people, and that's what he's trying to cope with. So please, do not take advice from men like this unless you are consuming enough salt to mummify your intestines. They are misguided and too full of themselves to actually see past their own noses. Fuck out of here.